Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "And He Ain't Gonna Jump No More." This story goes back to when I had first joined the Army, 1995. As a new soldier out of basic, I was sent to Fort Benning, Georgia for my first 3-year tour. There I met the training sergeant of my unit, whom I will call Sergeant J. Sergeant J was your typical buck sergeant, first grade of NCO that separates non-commissioned officers from lower enlisted ranks. Now, while not all buck sergeants are jerks, there can be a few that let the sudden rush of a little power go straight to the head. This was Sergeant J. I had attended airborne school, parachute, out of basic, and I could not secure a posting with the 82nd write-off, so elected to do a tour at Benning in the interim. This was at the time rare because most soldiers that attend the airborne course either go to a jump posting or are acquiring jump training for a specific job, special forces, rangers, etc. Sergeant J off the bat did not like me for whatever reasons. I still to this day cannot explain. He took every waking opportunity to make my young life very miserable. I think it had to do with me being airborne qualified, as I had come to learn later he had tried several times to go, but washed out for whatever reasons. Now let me get to the story. Sergeant J was married. This I knew in passing conversations, but had never met the gal. Q to months after I had arrived. Sergeant J came into the battalion HQ where I was on duty for the day. With him in tow was what I had assumed was his wife. I rendered the proper greeting to him and then said something to the effect of, "Pleasure to meet your wife, Sergeant." Only it wasn't his wife. And my young self was unaware of this. It was his girlfriend he was cheating on his wife with, and I had just unknowingly let the cat out of the bag. To top it off, she did not know he was married. Cue the ensuing shitstorm that basically ended his marriage, but not his military career. I knew I was somehow going to be doomed. And that came in the form of his managing to get me on a year-long deployment to Kuwait. Now to some this would not have been the ideal thing. It wasn't for me right off the bat until learning that my enlistment bonus would be paid out while deployed, which thus resulted in it being paid tax-free. I wanted to travel to see places as well, so it turned out to be a win. Now to the revenge. During this deployment of a year, I went from private first class to corporal, which is one rank before buck sergeant. I was offered to stay on another year in Kuwait, which would afford me the opportunity to advance to sergeant. I took it and made my rank. Once this second year was over, I came home with my stripes and returned to said unit. Sergeant J was still there and newly promoted to staff sergeant, which is the next grade. To add to this, he finally got his request to go to airborne school. Through the grapevine I had learned that Sergeant J had a hidden penchant for marijuana, which of course is a no-no in the military. How he managed to escape coming up hot on the P*SS tests, who knows? In a twist of fate, the unit's sergeant in charge of scheduling and administering the drug P*SS tests was leaving for another posting. Seeing my opportunity, I jumped on this, requesting through my first sergeant to take on this responsibility. Now there is no set schedule for these tests to be administered, and are generally scheduled on the direction of the unit commander. We were coming up on our mandatory brigade compliance, and I knew that there was this concert event coming up that he was going to, so I scheduled a surprise test the morning after the concert. No one outside of the direct chain of command was aware of this test. Cue the next morning, everyone is lined up drinking water and getting ready for this drug test. I can see Sergeant J is sweating bullets. A day later I get the results of the unit test, and lo and behold, Sergeant J has not only come up hot for marijuana, but cocaine as well. Long story short, his 13-year career came to a very quick close. Court-martial, loss of rank to private, and a dishonorable discharge from the Army, and no coveted parachute school for him. And I have lost not one day of sleep. The next one is titled, "Tell Us If We Don't Like It We Can Leave." Okay, bye. I work as a housekeeper at a small local hotel. At the beginning, when I started, about 3 years ago, things were pretty peachy. I got above minimum wage and worked in an environment with a more relaxed working pace. We had more time than your average hotel to clean rooms, and it showed in customer satisfaction. We had stellar reviews, with customers raving about how there wasn't a speck of dust anywhere, how everything from the lampshades to the bathroom drain was always scrubbed squeaky clean. I loved my job and took pride in it, and when we had extra time, which happened from time to time, we would do some deeper cleaning like scrubbing all the walls inch by inch, disinfecting the whole bathroom, cleaning the blinds, etc. Even though we all had some extra time, we used it to make sure the rooms were always up to a very high standard. As a result of this, we got a reputation of being an affordable but very clean hotel, so our popularity spiked. Even before we got so popular, in our prime we were booked full about 90% of the days. Our boss made a pretty nice amount of money. We don't have a reception, we're self-service, you just get a passcode for your room via text message, so he saved money with that. He drives an expensive car and seems very well off. We were never struggling financially. Then things started changing. We're a very close-knitted team of cleaners who have been in the house for years. A couple of us left at the end of last year, one moved to another state, another became a housewife after having a kid, and we started expecting newcomers to our team. They never came. Our boss claimed that it's hard to find workers for this kind of job. We never had anyone interviewed and I never saw ads anywhere that were hiring, so I'm not sure he was even planning on replacing them. So our work pace got tighter. We managed somehow, but there was no longer time for thorough cleaning. Then, the boss opened a restaurant so that the guests could have breakfast. Cleaning it daily got added to our workload, and that place is massive. It takes at least 1.5 hours to clean daily. At the same time, he also opened a separate Airbnb-style apartment, 3 bedrooms, kitchen, living room, and bathroom, for larger groups who wanted to reside together. Cleaning that fell on us as well. So suddenly, we were down 2 people, there were 7 of us initially, and shoved 2 massive new responsibilities. We asked our boss again to hire more people, but he said no and that we've been having it too easy beforehand. He also refused to add another hour or 2 to our daily working hours, currently 9 AM to 3 PM. We have 6 hours and everything needs to be done at 3 PM sharp because that's when the new passcodes start working. Understandably, we were stressed out. There was suddenly far too much to do, and our boss also simultaneously expected that we would keep up our usual cleaning standard. But when our time per room plummets from 45 minutes to 25 minutes tops, usually closer to 15, obviously we're not able to clean everything the way we did before. We would get yelled at when we got bad feedback because there wasn't enough time to clean thoroughly enough. Customers who came in after our clean rooms were disappointed and took their business elsewhere. Also, my coworkers started calling in sick because they were burned out. It was a mess, but our boss maintained the outlook that if he just pushed a massive amount of work on us, we'd somehow magically find an extra pair of hands and get everything done 100%. Last week, we had a meeting with my coworkers. We discussed the current situation and to my surprise, everyone was considering quitting. Out of loyalty to our longtime employer, the 5 of us agreed to have a meeting with our boss and try to persuade him to hire more staff to bring the hotel back to its earlier standard. A couple of days later, we had the said meeting. Our boss was still in denial and said that we just need to up our pace and do things faster. He cited that most hotels give housekeepers about 20 minutes to do everything. We pointed out that it's true, but in that case, he can't expect us to clean better than those hotels. He scoffed and told us, if you don't like working here, then leave. That was all we needed to hear. That night we had another meeting amongst us cleaners. We checked our contracts and realized there was no agreed on notice for resignation as we're at will. So, we were all going to take his advice. This morning, at 9 AM sharp, the 5 of us paid our boss a visit. The look on his face when we simultaneously slammed down our resignation letters and marched out, leaving no one to clean the whole hotel today, will warm my heart for the rest of my days. He was absolutely stunned. He tried to call us to talk things over. We just did what you told us to. Have fun replacing what was a motivated, loyal, and dedicated team of cleaners who made your business bloom. The next one is titled, Walked Away on Top. This is a story about my ex-wife Sharon. I thought she was the love of my life. We met while I was in grad school, while she was working as an intern at the library I frequented. We clicked immediately and the rest was history. Within 2 years we were married and living happily ever after. I worked hard to get where I am at the firm I work at. This included sometimes 60-hour work weeks, but most of the time I was only working between 30 to 40 hours depending on the project, with weekends off. She meanwhile just worked as 9-5s and never finished school up. We were members at a fitness club and she would increasingly spend time there more and more, even though she just used it for the spa part and never really worked out. Soon it was getting ridiculous. She was also more and more guarded about her phone. So one night we were drunk and she passed out. Then her phone buzzed and an unknown number popped up asking if I was gonna be at work the next day. She was smart and never had any messages saved over 2 days from him, but the texts were damning. I forwarded them to me and kept the information. The marriage was done right then and there, and to think we were gonna try for kids. I immediately withdrew us from the club, which *SSED her off and caused a huge fight, but I said, we have to save up for the baby and a new house. She reluctantly agreed. She never did have the best metabolism, so this was bad for her. I then set up cameras in the house for future use, of course in court. I just needed time to collect my thoughts and my evidence and plot. I went on business trips and recorded her *seeking the guy in our bed. That was it for me. I hated her. I spent the next 6 to 8 months buying greasy foods, more and more beer, and loading our dinners with fatty foods and pasta, bread. Each morning I would wake up early and get us donuts every morning for the time. She easily gained 25 pounds over the time I gained like 10 pounds. Totally worth it. I also did what I could to be the best husband ever over that time. I called her all sorts of things and treated her like a princess so she wouldn't suspect a thing. I made the most romantic gestures and made our 4-year anniversary a dream vacation of hers. I did everything she wanted in bed and indulged in her deepest desires. I brought her shopping almost bi-weekly and took her to the best restaurants. I wanted her to know how much I loved her, and would say things like, I would never hurt you, I would always love you, you're mine forever, we're a team, etc. And you feel the same way, right? I don't know if it was the extra weight or the romantic gestures, but she seemed to stop going to him and was spending more and more time with me and fell in love, I suppose. Now was the time to strike. After saving up quite a bit, we had a serious talk about starting the process of having a kid. It sucked because this could have been one of the best conversations of my life, but instead it became the focal point of my revenge. We would do this thing where we would send each other a text about what we were thinking even if we were face to face. It originated in all that time in the library together and was reserved for romantic lovey-dovey or sexual texts. Long story short, this kind of communication was very intimate and special to us. So right when we started to talk I said, Sharon, take your phone out. She knew what this meant and was grinning ear to ear. She probably thought I was gonna say something cute. Instead I sent her a video. The look on her face was priceless. She couldn't speak, she couldn't move, she was paralyzed. She began bursting in tears and said she stopped seeing him 2 months ago, and that it only happened a handful of times. And that I worked too much and she was lonely and she was sorry and that he meant nothing and that we could move past it and have kids. She was a wreck. I told her she shattered my heart and that I could never forgive her and that she was everything to me. She was ecstatic, begging me to stay, saying she would do anything. I simply said no and that I already had a lawyer and that she could damn well bet that infidelity clause was gonna bite her harder than a bull shark. In the divorce I let her keep her car that I bought and all her assets. We had a split bank account since it was easier. I gave her the last 5 months on our lease and that was it. She got even bigger, and looks like shit now. She tries to contact me all the time but I just never respond. Best part, she can see that it's read. I really don't have feelings for her at all. She was in retrospect so selfish and only looked after herself and others if they suited her needs. Her parents were class acts and were so sorry to hear what she did to me. I doubt they even talked to her. My ex-mole loved me. She's alone as far as I can tell and struggling. To be honest, I pity her and feel bad because she used to be beautiful. Currently I'm not looking to date. I'm 26 and in the best shape of my life, making great money. I post all my fun times and frequently with beautiful girls from vacationing or clubbing or whatever I'm up to that given weekend. My new single life is actually amazing and I've found a new part of me that would have been lost with her. I shattered her soul, body, mind and heart by giving her everything and taking it away at the perfect time. Nothing too elaborate but enough to inflict lasting damage. The revenge doesn't feel that good now since I barely think of her, but it's nice every now and then to see my greatest enemy be diminished to a speck. The next one is titled, You Want Pics of the Party I'm Going to? Okay, sure, no problem. Although I am 21 years old, very sheltered within my church youth groups and fellowships, have always been totally transparent with my parents about all the major events of my life, perhaps to my detriment, have never been to a house party or come home drunk ever, have always come home within curfew. My parents, particularly my mother, believe I am not trustworthy of any independence in my life. Today I told my parents I would be attending a party without letting them know a few days beforehand. Mum was already *SSED at me for the past few days because Dad bought me a car. It's a requirement for my university program, unfortunately, and she wanted me to Uber everywhere, which is not possible. She was screaming all the way up until my ride arrived, accusing me of hating my family, demanding I stay home, and then she lurked by the door trying to glimpse who the driver was. Half an hour later, she, through my dad, texts me to send her photos of the party I'm going to. Mind you, it's just a small gathering. This makes me laugh and infuriates me. I have never done anything that is worthy of her suspicious scrutiny, believe me. I have never given her any reason not to trust me, always updating her on everyone I've dated, every gathering I've attended, every friend I've spoken to that day. But you know what? Dear Mummy asked for photos. So I gave her photos. Photos upon photos. Photos of every inch of the party. Dozens of photos. Photos of the clock. Of the appetizers. Photos of people's socks. Photos of the fridge. Of the bathroom. Of myself in the bathroom. I must have sent them 30 individual photos and more to come, believe me. Did someone move? Mummy was updated. She asked for photos, so. The next one is titled, "Doc pay for being 2 minutes late? Better provide pay for working late too." I worked in an electricity retailer call center. It was highly unionized, but the management tracked login times to the minute. One incredibly ridiculous thing they did was if you were a minute or two late, they would literally dock your pay by that many minutes. It wasn't really enough for us to really notice, and I'm sure they didn't actually save any money. I mean, if you were 15 minutes late I could understand not paying, but 3 minutes late? Well, eventually the union discovered what they were doing, and were completely PSSED that they hadn't been consulted about this DCK move. This is where their MC comes in. The union demanded log-on and log-off times for everyone in the call center. What management hadn't counted on was that all of us would often need to wrap up calls and clear the call queue before the call center could officially close. This often meant that operators would leave several minutes after their shift. On bad occasions, it could be 15 to 20 minutes delay before they could clock off, but mostly it was only a few minutes. The union made management recalculate everyone's pay for the year based on the clock on and clock off time. They also pointed out that staying past the end of shift triggered penalty rates. It turns out everyone, and I mean everyone, had spent more time wrapping up calls at the end of the day than they were late clocking on. Each of us got paid for lost wages, at overtime rates. It cost them a fortune, and they never docked the pay of anyone who was late ever again. The last one is titled, "Okay, I won't leave the room no matter what, even if there's a fire." So, this happened when I was in 4th grade. I tell this story often when asked about messed up stories, and my mum still tells it as well. I was a bit of a class clown. Let's call the teacher Miss Meanie. She was mean to me because I was a handful, and she apparently didn't know how to handle hyper children. This was in the 90s, and one of my previous teachers told my mother I should be on Ritalin to give you an idea of me as a kid. Anyway, I was always joking in class and distracting others. I was able to do my work, but I admit I know looking back that I was a handful. So, the discipline at my school was to put the kids outside the classroom. It was a private school from K-12, so you could attend from kindergarten to 12th grade. When we were in trouble and were sent out of class, we'd share the hall with 4th-8th graders, and the adjacent hall, joined by a hallway with a dark storage room, was 9 to 12 th. So, I saw kids of all ages. Me being the sociable little monster I would make conversation with them, being friendly. They would always talk, especially the older kids. Older guys thought it was funny I was in trouble, and I guess older girls thought it was endearing or funny, I don't know, but people always talked and even stood around to talk longer rather than passing by awkwardly. The teacher heard me and scolded me many times. She eventually moved me to that join hallway with the storage room in it. It was ceiling to walls with boxes, but she moved some out and put a desk in there. It didn't have but one functioning light as I was blocked slightly by the boxes, so it was dark, barely visible to write on my desk with. Once again, being sociable, I just stood in the hall and talked to passerby kids and older kids. Who was going to see me? It's at the end of the hall, and no teachers came. Well, Mrs. Meanie caught wind and came back there to scold me. She gripped my arm, hard enough to leave a red handprint, and pulled me into the back room with gritted teeth. She leaned in an inch from my face and said with the very same gritted teeth, half yelling, "You are not to leave this chair," after pushing me down into it. "No matter what. No matter who you see. You are not to leave this chair again until I come and get you. You are to remain here and do your work, or we will be taking this to the principal and calling your parents." Me, scared at that thought, could not help it since my brain is slower moving than my mouth. What if there's a fire? Joking, of course. Through the same gritted teeth, even if there is a fire. You stay in this seat until I say so. So, I did. Hours passed, and it's nearly lunchtime. I'm starving. I never ate breakfast as a kid, so I'm staring down the dimly lit clock time like it might suddenly start doing backflips. I hear the fire alarm go off. We have a drill twice a month, so I wasn't shocked. I started to get up, as I know I was supposed to no matter what, but then remembered Mrs. Meany gritting her teeth at me. Better do what she says, I thought, smiling, thinking it will be funny to see her reaction, knowing it was only a drill. I saw the kids and teens all filing out. Remember how I said it was literally 8 grades worth of students? Picture 12 or so classrooms each with up to 30 or 40 students in them walking down 2 narrow hallways. Like a herd of chihuahuas through a coffee straw. So, orderly, even in a straight line, is not happening. I see them all taper out and wonder where she is. I see them all gone, and now it's empty, only the flashing light from the hallway alarm and the ringing siren. I sit there thinking, oh man, when I see her face, this is going to be amazing. Giddy with excitement at the thought of it. Then I smelled smoke. 2 fire drills a month for 9 months a year for my entire life it felt like, and this time I smell smoke. Then I see smoke. I'm upstairs, at the back of a dark hallway, in an empty 2-story, large school building. We had no windows in my school for some reason. Looking back, I'm sure this breaks some sort of fire code now. Okay, I might have messed up. I'm going to go to the front. I started tearing up and getting watery-eyed. I was just thinking, I may have just committed suicide out of pettiness. When I hear stomping, loud and clear. She runs down the hallway, red-faced, teary-eyed, and out of breath and grabs me, and for the first time, Mrs. Meany is nice to me. She's hugging me and crying, rambling faster than I can keep up with, thank God, thank God, thank God, head count, can't see you, panicked, messed up so bad, so sorry, please forgive me, as she's carrying me down the hall. I come out. All the kids are in the parking lot along with the fire trucks. I never saw those in action, neat. They come out with several extinguishers. There was a small fire in the kitchen when making lunch. Thankfully, it was contained to a small area, did no real damage, only made a ton of smoke, and was put out quickly by the firefighters. The principal wanted to know why I was there, and I told him truthfully, I was told not to come out, even if there was a fire. This wasn't a jab at Mrs. Meany, but our principal was cold as ice and made you tell the truth. At my school, they actually paddled you with a wooden paddle with holes in it, a very old school type of punishment, even for the 90s. Irrelevant, but these horrors run deep. That thing whistled when swung and hurt. The principal had someone watch our class, and I'm assuming gave her an earful in her office for the nearly rest of the day. My mother was called, they all convened in the office, and once again, I'm assuming words were said. My mother was livid and said she paid too much money per month to have me locked in a closet, and even I was being a little crap. There are better ways to punish me. Like, say, calling her first thing and letting her put the fear in me, which she did after this. I did not get off scot-free from her. As relieved as she was that I wasn't dead, she knows all of this crap was my fault in the end, and my stupidity could have gotten me killed. Mrs. Meany was a lot nicer to me then, a lot more patient, and I was less of a little crap. I still was a class clown, but within reason, and never tried to distract kids again. She was a lot nicer, and more understanding, and tried to reach kids rather than scream and scold at first glance. I had a lot of bad times at that school and left only a year later due to a particularly bad incident in which, once again, my mother was present. But this time, the teacher was fired for gross negligence that nearly hospitalized me. This time, I was not being a crap. Thanks for listening.